everybody, and welcome to Guiding Star Astrology. I'm so excited today because today I am interviewing astrologer extraordinaire Tania Daniels. Tania, it is so lovely to have you back on my channel again. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Kesenya, for the invitation. It's good to be back here.
Wonderful. Now, Tania, for those of you who don't know, Tania is a very high-level academic astrologer who's written a number of articles for various astrological publications, including astro.com. You might like to list others, Tania. I found you through some of your articles on astro.com, but have you written for other publications like Mountain Astrologer and things like that?
I have written for the AA Journal. I have written for the German Meridian. I have written for Turkish publications. For the Italian main publications. Yeah, I don't remember a number. The ISAR journal, yeah, well, I think the main numbers.
The main ones. And you're a well-known speaker on the astrological circuit in Europe too, so always giving conferences and what have you. And most excitingly, this is something that I've been itching to share with my audience. You're about to very soon release a book on declination and the influence of declination, so we are so excited for that to come out, and when it is released
not only about declination. Actually, I started with latitude. It is about latitude, declination, the nodes, and the apogees. So these four cycles, let's say, are woven together, and I will try to explain each one and how they are connected, actually, for interpretation purpose.
So fantastic. And of course, if you are a student of astrology watching this video, you'll know how important those things are, and they take you to a much greater depth than just sun sign astrology or surface level Western astrology. So we are very excited about that. And you're also very like, you're a Hellenistic astrologer. Yes, is that the right title to give you?
Yeah, you know, I don't like actually boxes. I don't like to be called, you know, a Renaissance astrologer or medieval astrologer or Hellenistic astrologer. I'm an astrologer, so I explore traditional techniques. I'm not really interested if they are Hellenistic or if they are medieval. I try what works for me, and especially what works for me from a logical point of view. So I have to understand what I'm actually doing and how it works in terms of astronomy mainly. I wouldn't say math because I'm not a math genius, but I need to have a full understanding about what we're actually talking about in the sky, which are the connections. And this is why I got actually into latitude and declination, so the astronomical part of it.
So looking at the celestial mechanics, which is just so important to really understand astrology. And in ancient times, astronomers were also astrologers. In fact, up until I think it was like the 1600s, they were one and the same thing. And then the church kind of divided the two paths, and unfortunately they've diverged, which is a real loss for many astrologers who don't know the astronomy behind what they're sharing and what the information that they're giving to people. So I think it's very valuable.
Also, they won't understand a lot of techniques. For example, what is a crooked sign or what is a straight rising sign? This has an astronomical meaning, so the ascension time of the signs is different, but it has a very important purpose for interpretation. Because if we talk about straight rising signs, they indicate you know, they rise straight in the sky, and they indicate a quality, as well as crooked signs indicate a different quality. Now, especially in Ori, you can use these two details to describe a situation. For example, William Lilly used crooked signs to describe, or if the significator of a thief, for example, was in a crooked sign, you know, he would run away in a crooked way. So he wouldn't go straight to his hiding place. He wouldn't have maybe just an idea where he would hide. He would just run across the country and maybe stop here and there, pick up some flowers.
We'll find as all thieves do.
Got distracted. And But a straight rising sign would describe the thief having a clear idea where to go, what to do, more very Capricornian in a way, right? I have it organized, go there, that's my my place to go. So, and it would indicate a different speed. Crooked signs rise quicker over the horizon, so they you know they have a different speed. So in orrery, you can use these astronomical information for so many purposes, and I find it really sad that so many astrologers do not know about that, because they miss those details in their interpretation, right? Another example, for example, is actually the reason why I started writing my book, and it is, well, it seems very a funny reason, because I was reading one of William Lilly's example charts. Well, William Lilly, we should say, was a 17th century Aries astrologer. I think the most famous we know of so far. And well, he has a huge chapter on physiognomy. So he used in every chart, he used to look at the significator of the question of the orrery, and to see if the significator described the querent in an appropriate way. So if he had, you know, a squat, fat man, an old man sitting in front of him, but the significator in the chart described a beautiful, thin, tall lady, there was something not right with the chart. So he used to, how should I say, to check the significator and which description it would give from the querent, right, from the person, or about how it would describe the person standing in front of him. But he would also use physiognomy to describe the thief might escaped, or similar situations, right? The brother inquired upon, as he would say, or any person relevant in the chart. And he was pretty known for doing this also, you know, in a pub. He would describe people about their marks, if they had a blemish or a mark, you know, in some places that you could show in the public. And so this was the fun part, but also a very practical part, because if you have, you know, a mark in your face, and it would be, for example, you know, a black mark with Saturn, it could be in the first house. First house describes the face or the physical appearance. You could see it immediately. So he would use this information. But there is one sentence in this chapter where he says, okay, Mercury describes the thief. I don't remember which person right now, but Mercury was describing this person he was looking at, and he said, okay, Mercury having northern latitude describes the man to be fat. This was the very first time that I ever read about latitude in orrery. It has never been mentioned before. To my knowledge, Lily doesn't use latitude. It was just that sentence.
Just a random.
That was like, oh, what is that? Nobody has ever told me about latitude. So it was totally curious. It was just this detailed, this small information. And I started researching latitude, and I would never have imagined that it would turn out in a very thick book.
And taking so many years to get done.
Yeah, well, this is the third year, and I can tell you I'm writing it every single day. So this maybe tells you about my, you know, my speed.
No, it tells me about your thoroughness. That's what it tells me.
Yeah, no, there's really, really much research in the book. So I started researching, well, obviously only traditional texts. But not only astrology texts. So there's a lot of sight reading, which becomes, there is a lot of confirmation on the texts. I have used several religious texts, for example, which are very specific on latitude and declination. Several cultures, several religions, Zoroastrian religion,
Right.
Christian religion, it is mentioned several times. Well, the Indians have a bunch of information, obviously. So there's a lot of references on that, and it is simply not true that these concepts haven't been used in astrology. It rather seems that the more we go back in time, the more it has been used, and it seems to me that the more we go to recent times, the more astrologers have forgotten about it. And I have also the impression, and I prove it with the quotes that I give, and I go into pretty much detail there, that the concepts of declination and latitude have often been mixed up, and that declination in many occasions was called latitude, and latitude was just the reference to distance from the circle of reference. But sadly, the reference circle was not always indicated. So it wasn't always said, okay, the distance from the equator or from the ecliptic. So we assume now that latitude is just the distance from the ecliptic. But in several occasions, this simply did not make any sense. But if we use declination there, well, I give this in the book. But it has been used, and it is normal if you think. Our two main reference circles in astrology are the equator and the ecliptic. And the cross points, the crossings between those two are our equinoxes. Right?
Yes.
So when the equator meets the ecliptic, we have or the spring equinox or the autumn equinox. Right? So, and a second concept is that actually our cardinal points, and we know that the sun has its orb, the ecliptic, and travels always on that, ecliptic. It never gets, the sun is the only planet that has it can't have any latitude, obviously, because it's path. But all the other planets can be distanced at a certain distance from the ecliptic. They can be either north or south from the ecliptic at any moment. And but what is actually the important thing to consider is that the sun has we don't consider the sun to having nodes, right? Nodes are the positions when the planet crosses the ecliptic. Like the moon crosses the ecliptic, and at that point the moon would be said to be at its or her own node, right?
Yeah.
So when the moon crosses the ecliptic and ascends, it's going upstairs, so to say. It's at this north node. It's at the ascending node, and when it goes downstairs to the southern sign, it is at her. She's at her descending node. And we use the nodes a lot, the lunar nodes a lot in astrology. But coming back to the sun, the equivalent of the nodes, of the lunar nodes, in terms or referred or related to the sun, are the equinoxes. The equinoxes are the points where the sun crosses the equator.
Yep.
So, and the solstices are obviously the 2 points where the sun reaches its major declination, right?
Yes.
So
23.27 degrees or something.
Yes. So the solstices mark the major declination of the sun, and the equinoxes mark the zero declination when the sun crosses the equator. And every planet has its own set of nodes, and they have been mentioned actually in very ancient texts with a specific indication of the degree for each planet.
Right.
But this has been forgotten, and obviously what the nodes indicate is a direction, because if the moon moves from her lowest latitude towards her highest latitude, then she is increasing in latitude, she is ascending. So from her lowest latitude, she moves to her north node, crosses the ecliptic, moves to her northern maximum or northern peak, which is called the bending, right? Yes. The maximum latitude, and from there she she descends, crosses the south node, goes to her southernmost latitude.
Can I ask a question, Tanya? In Vedic astrology, the waxing moon is considered to be a malefic, and the waxing moon is the benefic, and the waning moon is a malefic. Do they have a similar idea or effect if when the moon is ascending and descending by declination?
Yeah, this is exactly the point. We have a latitude cycle, which is just referred to the major distance from the ecliptic. The same can be said for declination, because the planets move through the signs. The planets do not have declination. It's the signs who have declination.
Right.
Planets can have latitude. They
Right.
move up and down from the ecliptic, so they do have latitude. But a planet doesn't have declination. It's the sign that is either below the equator or above the equator. So the signs have declination. So every time a sun enters a new sign, it changes its declination, right?
Right.
So
okay.
every planet in southern signs has southern declination. Every planet in northern signs, north from the equator,
Yes,
right, can have northern declination. So these are concepts which are very often totally confused. They can have, for example, to make it just more complicated, a planet can have a northern declination but southern latitude at the same time.
Wow. Okay.
So I try to explain all these concepts. So a planet, the question was if a planet is malefic, if it has great latitude, was it?
That's correct. Yes.
Yes. So
or ascending and descending in the same way that a waxing and a waning has malefic or benefic connotations in Vedic astrology.
yeah, well, the ascending and descending phases in terms of declination and latitude have both been used for gardening purposes, for example.
Yes.
And we will see how this is important because every phase can be useful. Yes. For example, to give a very easy to understand example, the most important, we have already talked about declination, and one of the most important concepts are the straight and crooked rising signs. They are related to declination because the straight rising signs are those from Cancer down to Sagittarius, right? When the sun actually is on its descending path. When the sun goes down from the solstice to the winter, from summer solstice to the winter. Well, I'm talking about the northern hemisphere. Sorry, we have.
Yeah, that's okay. Let's keep it northern hemisphere focus. We know how to adjust down here.
Okay, so in the northern hemisphere, we have the summer in Cancer and the winter solstice in Capricorn. So we would have the sun descends from Cancer to Sagittarius.
From June to December.
Capricorn, it is ascending again, or the sun will ascend again towards the maximum declination. So the straight rising signs are actually those signs in which the sun descends.
Right.
But what is used, was very much used, for example, in elections. It is good for planting trees because you would have they are straight rising, so the tree may need more time, but it will grow straight, it will be stronger, right? It is not useful for every kind of gardening purpose. Yes, you wouldn't plant annual bushes or flowers in a straight rising sign because it needs too much time to grow and then the season is over. So there you would use crooked rising signs. They are quicker, right? So, but you need a tree not to grow very quick because it would be very disorderly. But you need straight rising sign for steady growth, for example. It is also important if you want to buy something that has a value, like antiquities. You wouldn't buy them with a crooked rising sign. There are many purposes. But for example, this was used in medicine too, as you said before that every astrologer was an astronomer or vice versa, but it was also true that doctors were supposed to know astrology because they had to choose the right day to give medicine. And Culpeper, Nicholas Culpeper, one of the most famous
medical
Renaissance astrologers and doctors, said that a doctor without astrological knowledge would just be blind. Like he wouldn't know when the time was right, when the nature would accept help, from doing an election. There were times when the nature would not allow to be helped.
Right.
But other moments when the constellations, when the settings were right, then the nature would kind of invite the doctor, okay, use those times to give medicine or to disintoxicate a person, stuff like that. So, for example, the declination was important when it came to, for example, I'm not sure if you can openly speak about that, but one thing that I stick to my mind is abortion.
Right.
Because which sign would you use? There are a number of factors, right? So we can't discuss them all. But you would use a straight rising sign on the ascendant because you would want to make sure that nothing, remains in the body which could cause infection, right?
Yes.
And you would use also descending sign. It must be descending from the planet. The significator must be descending in its descending phase. Again, to make sure that the job has been done properly, way, and to save, so there are and you would put the significator. That's the only occasion I have ever read about that in those parts of the zodiac which are called to be let me not compass the burnt path.
Say that again, sorry.
The burnt path, right?
Oh, what's the burnt path? I've not heard of that term.
This is actually a condition of the planet that you would not choose for any other purpose. But in this example, it makes sense. It is between Libra and Scorpio. But that's
is that like 15 degrees Libra to 15 degrees Scorpio? I was just reading about that today. Okay, I've got
So you would use this this part of the zodiac for these kind of extraction. But you can also use similar conditions if you have, for example, a gastritis. If you need a purge, they use also specific signs to do that, and they are all connected in some way to declination. But the problem is they don't mention declination. If they use straight rising signs and crooked rising signs, which are pretty commonly mentioned in oral astrology, especially,
and financial astrology, that's very well used as well.
They don't refer it back to declination, but it's all about declination. What is it? So, and that's the purpose. So negative, it depends always on the context, right? The moon is actually, in some texts I have read that the waning moon is actually more benefic when connected to the nocturnal planets, as are Venus, and maybe sometimes, depends on the condition, Mercury. It makes sense. It's the most nocturnal thing,
right?
And well, there are many conditions that we could talk about, but it's.
Well, one of the reasons, Tania, that I wanted to invite you on at the moment to talk about this topic is the fact that we now have the North Node in tropical astrology in Aries and the South Node in Libra. And that is, I read an article of yours where you were talking about when that occurs, we have the moon reaching its major Lunistice. And I wondered if you might like to share a bit about that with us and what a major Lunistice of the moon actually may bring us during this time while the North Node's in Aries and the South Node's in Libra.
Okay, maybe I should explain first what a Lunistice is.
Please do. That'd be great.
But we have to go a little back. So, so if we look at our ephemeris, and if we have a good ephemeris, we have three indications. We have the longitude, we have the latitude, and we have the declination.
Mm-hmm.
So we know that the moon moves into a new sign every 2.5 days, and it will go to our highest latitude, lowest latitude in a month, and the same for declination, right?
Mm-hmm.
They are different values. But if we look at, maybe I can just share just a graph, Kesenya, what
Yes,
do you
please
think?
do.
So maybe
it's ready to go when you are.
Yes. Let me see if I can show you here. Is it coming?
That's it. Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
It's just a graph, right? It's solar fire, and I'm just showing this is a month, and we would see the declination of the moon like this. She will reach her highest declination here, and this particular point, it would be around the 6th of January, and then it's the lowest declination. It's 2 weeks later, obviously, like the 18th of January in this case. And she will do this every month. So we would observe her highest declination and her lowest declination every month. But what many people do not observe is that the declination is not always the same. So she won't reach a certain, let's say, bound every month. The declination will vary about on a long term. And I can show you. I hope the screen will help me here.
Yeah.
Because if I change my settings, let's say to 80 years. Let's see what comes up.
You've got 18 months there. Is that what you're wanting?
No, I meant years. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes. Now that looks more likely. Okay.
Oh,
so
wow.
what we see here is we have our monthly declination, and it will go up and down on a very regular basis. But if you look at it on a far greater scale, then we see those waves, right? And we see they are very regular. But what does it mean is that the moon has a declination cycle that has its proper life. So every 18.6 years, the moon will reach her highest possible declination period. Right now, we are at the beginning of one, as you can see here, we are here, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the end of 23, we are starting with our peak period, right?
Yes.
The peak period takes like 2.5 years. What does it mean is that on these peaks, the moon will reach every month for 2 years, more or less, 28 plus degrees. The first time we reached 28 plus degrees was on September, the very day of the flood in Libya.
Yes. I was going to ask you about the flood in Libya because I felt that was somehow connected here. Keep going. Sorry.
Yeah. So what is interesting that we will have our declination cycle, as I told you before, as I've shown you, it will go up and down, but the maximum that the moon will reach every month will be above the 28 degrees. And this will stay so until the end of 25. Then it will start to go a little under, maybe 27.9, 27.8, and it will stay there, right? So for 2.5 years, it will stay there. And this is called a standstill period, right? Because it will stay still, so to say, above those 28 degrees for this particular time. There is a peak period, right? During this time, there's the months where it will reach major peak, but let's say this is a period that is a standstill period. We have a standstill period also on a monthly basis. This means if I have, for example, on my mobile phone, I use Astrovisor. I'm not paid for that, so it's not publicity. It's just because you can scroll very easily the dates. And what you will see is that if you just look at the declination of a planet, of whatever planet, but it is easier with a moon because she has so short cycles. So
Yes.
if you scroll the declination of the moon, you will see she rises, then comes to her maximum, and she stays about 2 days at the same degree, not in longitude. No, she will always move in longitude, not in latitude, or just the declination. So, and this is the monthly standstill, right? It is like a hesitating period.
Yes.
And from that highest declination, she will then descend south, right? But this is also happening on this major cycle, like here. So
Yes.
2.5 years, 2 days on the monthly basis, more or less 2 years, a little, that she will stay at the same declination here. So, but then she moves down every month. She will have a little lesser and lesser declination, right? For example, here we have a maximum of 27. Here we have a maximum of 24, and so on and so forth. So from this period to that other period here, this takes 9 years, 9 years and 9.3 years. And this is another, it's a minor peak. This is called Major Lunistice. This is called Minor Lunistice. Yes, here's a standstill period as well. Same time, a little less actually, a little less, like less than 2 years. And in this period, the moon will reach only 18 point something degrees. Yeah. So 18.606 is the minimum, and then she will start slowly to increase again on the monthly basis until she reaches again for 28 plus degrees, right? So the time from the lowest, from the minor lunistice to next minor lunistice is 18.6 years. Major lunistice to major lunistice, 18.6 years. Okay.
Yep.
So, and this has to do with the nodes, right?
Yes.
If the moon changes her nodes, or maybe doesn't change the nodes. What I'm saying, the nodes change position, and in 18.6 years they come back to their original position.
Yes.
Right?
So when the north node is in Aries, it's major. When the north node is in Libra, it's minor.
Yeah. Exactly, because actually at that time the moon meets the vernal equinox, and when the moon matches the vernal equinox, she will reach the highest declination. So, but we can see the moment she enters, the nodes enter Aries, tropical Aries, she will start having 28 degrees declination. And as I said, the recent cycle started just this month. Actually, it started all the 10th or 11th of September, and you can see it on your ephemeris. So what I found out is that these cycles are pretty much connected to major, let's say,
Earth events. Yeah.
Because we are talking about declination. Declination is linked to the equator. So people have found out that when the moon crosses the equator, there seems to be a greater pull, gravitational pull. So this is on a monthly basis. She crosses the equator, 0 degrees declination every month. But when she reaches the highest and lowest of her solstices, of her lunistices, sorry, there seems to be more tectonic activity. So what I found out, for example, in the last cycle, the 18.6 years ago, there was just the beginning of the last major lunistice, and it coincided, I don't know if you remember, but
the tsunamis.
On December 2004, we had the big tsunami in Banda Aceh with 200,000 fatalities.
I remember.
But I have to say, this huge flood, this tsunami coincided with 2 other main factors. And it built up a horrific correlation. And it was that the tsunami happened at the beginning of the major lunistice. So this is a major gravitational pull. And then the moon was on her perigee, at her closest position to the Earth, and it was a full moon. So three
Oh,
things added up, right? And it was not just the moon, the declination was not just the perigee, it was all coming together. And so we had this horrible consequences.
so I'm wondering, Tania, next year in April, we're having the conjunction of Jupiter and Uranus while we've got this moon at her major Lunistice period occurring. I mean, Uranus is often connected to Earth events as well. So would you anticipate that we might see a lot of activity climate-wise?
I would think that we will see more activity. I have also seen that, I don't know if you're aware what the Campiflegrei are. They, you know, everybody knows about Yellowstone, right? Yellowstone
Yes,
is the second biggest, as far as I know,
volcano.
the second biggest volcanic field on Earth. It is a kind of huge magma ball below below the soil.
Yeah.
The biggest one is actually in Naples, below the Vesuvio. I was told it's the biggest, it's even bigger than Yellowstone, but I'm not a geologist. I have heard from a geologist, but I wouldn't confirm. However, the Vesuvius is not the problem. The problem is that the Vesuvio is just very close to many other dead volcanoes, and there's all the entire zone of under Naples is basically a huge volcano beneath the earth.
And we haven't had any activity there for...
It is bubbling. There is something that is called bradisisma, which is a sequence of small earthquakes, but many of them. We had just this week 4.2, which might not be much in many other countries, but in a country where where there is a lot of volcanic activity, it is raising concerns. So this is going on for a while, but now it has increased. 4.2 is huge for this for this region. So
Yes.
just saying the volcanic activity has increased, and we have seen Morocco horrible earthquake. What was it, 6.8?
When was that? Just recently?
Yes, it was just this day, the week before the flood in Libya. I think 2 days before that. So and then the flood in Libya on the same day the moon reached her 28 degrees. Yeah, so yes, I'm afraid I think we will see more of this. Don't forget also that Hurricane Catherine or Katrina, what is it called? The one in New Orleans happened also during a major Lunistice.
Right.
And if I have it in my book, I just, I signed all major earthquakes when they happened, and most happen during a major period. Not all, not all, but many. It seemed to be more activity there. So.
And do eclipses tie in with that at all?
I've not really looked into eclipses related to that, because there is some point I can't, I have to stop the work. I have to.
The amount of research is phenomenal, isn't it?
I just wanted to write about Mercury, showing a fat person in latitude, but then I came to almost every topic in astrology. So I have a chapter on eclipses, but not related to that. But I would think they are related, but we can explore that maybe in another book.
Yes. I'm going to America in a couple of weeks' time when the eclipses are occurring, and I'm like, I think I'll just stay away from Yellowstone just to be sure at that time.
I don't want to discuss eclipses because the next one happens on the degree of my ascendant, so please, let's skip this topic.
I've got it happening on my moon, so you and I are very connected, I think, there.
Yeah, sure.
We'll be in touch to see what happens. Oh, so that's actually a question. Like you've talked about how Earth events are tied to the major lunistices. What about just two questions here. What about the minor lunistice? What does that bring? More calm times or less volatile times?
No, I don't know. The research shows that those times are important, as we have, a ball tied between two cords, but the major tension is obviously on the point of the cord when you tied it. It seems that both are important, as well as apogee and perigee. So they are, you know, when the moon is at the perigee, there is something, she influences water, right? And there is this phenomenon that is called spring tide.
Yes.
It's not spring or summer, it's like to spring, like growing big, right?
Yes.
While on when there is a new moon at the apogee, so the farthest point from Earth, it would be a nip tide, a very small tide. So I don't know if you have so many tides of this kind in Australia, but in the North Sea, you can see that the water actually, in the Canada, there's one point. In the North Sea, you would see that a harbor. You'd see a harbor, and certain times of the day, it is full of water, and you see the boats there, you know, playing with the water. In other hours, the harbor is totally empty. There is no water anymore.
There's somewhere in Canada, I think, that have the biggest tides in the world,
yeah,
like
7
Halifax.
meters.
Yes.
7, yeah, I don't know Halifax. I maybe close. It's 7 meters. 7 figures on. In the North Sea is less. I don't know how many meters, maybe 2 or 3. I don't know. But I know you can actually book a tour and walk into the sea for kilometers.
Wow.
Or a lot of huge distance before the water comes back. And obviously there are warning signals everywhere. Don't go in the water from then to then. Look at the schedule when the tide comes back, because you could find yourself inside in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah, so stranded.
When the tide comes back, right? So this is not something that happens usually in other places of the world, but there you can actually see how much influence the moon has. She takes away the water, she takes it away, and then she brings it back.
Yeah, huge.
On a very regular basis. And when she crosses the equator, it seems to be stronger. And well, obviously at full moon, but also new moon. New moon, it seems to be, it has an influence. There seems to be less water. Full moon has seems to be more water. On the perigee, everything is, increased further.
So these extremes affect Earth events. Does it affect weather and, you know, mundane astrology, like political situations, and, you know, how we feel on a personal level? How else do we see this?
Yeah, well, you have to think that the moon influences water in primus. So yes, water. This is where you can see the effects most easily. But the moon does not just affect water. We have to think that the moon affects currents, wind. So the storm, the hurricane Katrina or Katrina or whatever it's called, it was affected by the wind, by the moon. The winds are pulled in a direction, right? And what is often forgotten is that tectonic plates are also floating on magma, and the moon governs and rules everything that is floating in some way, right? That moves. And so tectonic plates are also influenced by the moon, but obviously we should not expect tectonic activity necessarily on the full moon, because there is inertia. So it may just take time before the effects are shown, and hopefully they are not shown, and not nobody wants that, right? But we can be sure that the influence is there, and so also
in mundane astrology, the moon represents the masses, whereas the sun is the leadership. So is there an effect on large groups of people because of the moon at this major lunistice as well?
Yeah, well, obviously, yes, but then we have to see details. The moon acts on everything that lives. So this is always a problem with mundane astrology. Forecasting is difficult because we need to know which place we look at, right?
Yeah.
For example, if we would have seen the ingress chart for Libya, we might not have necessarily be able to see what was coming. But if we looked it up for Derna, because Libya is big, it's a great country, right?
Yeah.
So it is. We have to see what the flood affected one city, right? Well, also Greece and Bulgaria and other places. I know the winds, the storm Daniel, which came in. But if we look just at Libya, what happened, it was apparently Derna, right, where it happened. So we would look at the lunation chart, and I did it. I just had a talk with my friend and colleague Rod Chang, and we talked about declination and the the chart of Libya. We looked at the declination on the lunation, sorry, and what we saw is that at the moment that in the lunation Jupiter was at the MC and Venus was at the AC, and you would say, oh, that's lucky, right?
Mm.
Yeah, but we could also see in the same chart that Venus was on the ascendant. Venus is actually considered the minor benefic and Jupiter the major benefic. But
yes,
a major benefic is benefic only when he's connected to the ascendant, when he makes good aspects, when we say he must be connected, because then he is up, like giving help, helping out, giving a hand, you know, then he is connected to his host. He's connected to the ascendant. So there is a connection between, they know each other and they help each other. But the problem is when there is no connection, when Jupiter has no dignities in the ascendant, or he is not looking at the ruler of the ascendant or stuff like that, then he can show his negative quality, which is increasing. Yeah, the increasing of something, the increase of water, of too much, of you know, there were 2 broken dams and the water was just floating in the city. And Jupiter there in that position would increase a disaster.
right.
It's not always a positive thing. We have to, and Saturn is not always a negative planet.
No.
We have to look what it describes, right? But in the lunation of Libya, what happened, that the lunation happened close to, the moon was close to Saturn, and Saturn is in Pisces, and
yes.
in that specific lunation, those planets were in the 8th house, right? And well, Saturn describes dams, right? You know, a building, or that
boundaries. Water boundaries,
exactly,
yeah.
Exactly, yes. Stable structures.
Mm.
But when Saturn is in Pisces, then he can't actually hold it, you know, because there are no boundaries in Pisces.
Yeah.
So what happens in Pisces, Saturn has to learn how to in an example I use, you know, there is no bridge. This would be very Saturnian, but maybe there are stones in a river and you have to learn how to put your feet on those stones and step by step cross the river, right? To make use of what there is. Water will flow around the stones. Maybe you can find a way.
Yes.
Right? This is about Saturn in water. Now, in this situation, the dam broke. It broke because of the much water it was raining, but in first place it broke because of the negligence of the people. Right? These dams were very old, made just of brick walls or brick stones or bricks, and there was no maintenance. We know what happened to Libya, all those wars, and
yes,
you know, they just don't have money for it, so we should not blame anybody. But the point is, there was no maintenance, and those dams broke, so it was building up of things. And yeah, it happened in a major Lunistice period. It happened on the day the moon reached her highest declination. It happened with the moon, with Saturn in the 8th house, so there are many factors building up. And yes, as you said, the moon was afflicted. I don't know how many thousand people died there, and I think they don't know even by now, because many won't be found. So yes, definitely affecting people.
Yeah.
And this is what Saturn and Moon together in the 8th house in the lunation.
Yeah.
So right.
So there it is, the moon affecting the masses with a cataclysmic Earth event. Yes. What about on a personal level? What would we expect if it was sort of triggering something in our chart, or we were feeling, you know, it was prominent in our personal chart? What would we expect with a major Lunistice affecting us by maybe, I don't know, at a full moon or a new moon?
Difficult to say. I use declination mainly for
Mundane.
weather, also for elections. As I told you, much use is this straight and crooked rising signs. But I have seen major financial crises also occur during a Lunistice.
Yep.
So yeah, there seems to be a correlation, but then there seems also to be a correlation with the sunspots,
Yes.
major magnetic changes, or major changes in the magnetic field of the Earth. We should think that all those waves are influencing each other, right? So,
of course.
And I think we should far more research the interferences of the sunspots in relation to declination and other things. So there's this. But yes, I think we have certainly an interesting period coming up, and we will learn more about it.
Could I ask, I might just get you to stop the share, Tania, and we can go back to you and I talking. But in Australia, I don't know about other Southern Hemisphere countries, but in Australia, they are predicting a very, very hot, dry summer, like what is it, El Nino, I think.
Oh yeah, this is we forgot talking about El Nino. Yes, that seemed to be a major thing during those Lunistices too. Yes, I have overposted in my book actually the declination graph, as you have seen it right now, with a graph for the same time period of El Nino. And we know there are minor El Nino phenomena, and there are those big ones where the currents between Australia and Chile invert, right?
Yes.
Normally Australia has cold water warm water, and Chile has the cold water, right?
Yes.
And when there's the El Nino,
it reverses.
Cold water comes to Australia, all the rivers die, and Chile gets the hot water, and their fish population dies. Just to say it very quickly. And it was bizarre to see that the major El Nino phenomena exactly overlapped the Lunistices. So
wow.
I don't have it right here, but there's I have to remember to show it. It was just interesting how they
So when people
then there are moments where two of phenomena overlap, the El Nino and La Nina.
Right? And they overlap.
There are two.
Right.
Did you know there's also the phenomena called La Nina? Yeah. It's another current. And don't ask me right now. I can't tell from my head. But there are moments where these two phenomena overlap. You might just look it up.
Yes.
La Nina.
So when people talk about climate change, what do you think? Because you're looking at weather patterns and Earth event patterns that correlate to the planets, and
never talk about religion, and never.
All right, we'll leave that. Pretend I didn't ask that.
COVID. Never talk about COVID, and don't talk about climate change.
We will move on. We'll just let people think and
no. My opinion
that one themselves.
I can give a very polite answer. Hopefully.
It sounds like you and I might be on a similar wavelength there. We perhaps don't need to explain too much more about that.
First, I think I'm a sworn environmentalist, so I absolutely think that humanity is at a very, very low point, and that if we spray our plants, and here where I live, they say we give them a medication. Yeah, well,
that's what they say. It's like they're giving the plants a medication.
Yeah, we give them medicine. We give them a medication. Just please don't ask me. Don't let me speak about that. But we spray our crops, and we poison our water, and then we have to buy bottled water, plastic water, because it stays for so long time in plastic bottles. Or we have to drink filtered tap water. Tap water. Do you want to go into what tap water is?
No.
So it's certainly not a spring or sprinkling water, right? It's not fontaine water. So first we poison what we will eat later. Do we want to start about speaking about meat? No, we don't. No, we don't. Yeah, I'm a vegetarian, and one of the reasons I became vegetarian is because I saw what they do to the animals.
Yeah.
But okay, that being said, with our oceans polluted, close to Australia, there's plastic field, right? It's big like a continent. I saw it.
Yeah.
It's so embarrassing what humanity does. And yeah, pollution is obviously not only cars but industries. So everything we produce, and as people wouldn't understand that they eat what they pollute. But sooner or later we eat that stuff, and look at the cancer rates and stuff. So being said that,
yes,
I don't think that we cause climate change. We influence climate and we should not pollute, and this is obviously a huge thing. But I don't think that the Earth is that everything has to do with humankind, and I think that the Earth has her own cycles, right?
Yes.
For example, we can see in the 17th century there were these Belgian and Dutch painters like Virgo and others, and they painted those icy scenes.
It was a mini ice age.
Landscapes, beautiful, but very, very cold, extremely cold. And they lived in something that is called a minor ice age, or minor, small, mini ice age. It was not a true ice age, but it was a moment of a very cold period. Certainly not influenced by pollution, but these minor Earth ice ages happen rather frequently, right?
Yes.
And sometimes if we study geology, we see that mini ice ages are sometimes introduced, or as far as I know, always introduced by periods of increased temperatures. Heat waves. First the heat wave, and then the temperatures go down. Why is that? Because the currents change. If El Nino and La Nina come together, they are able to change the major winds, major currents that flow in a certain altitude, and they can hugely influence the entire global climate much quicker actually than our pollution does. So yeah, that's what I think, that our pollution is one thing, horrible, but the cycles of the Earth are very, very strong, and maybe not, I don't know, properly studied. Yeah, sure, there are experts, but not on the main, that not people are not discussing them so much. Maybe just that's just my idea.
I value your opinion, Tania. I really do, and I think we're probably got a similar perspective there, for sure.
Yeah, but you see the declination cycle. So the Earth has many of those cycles where we have elevated sunspot activity. Do you want to talk about that? What do they influence, right? We have differences in magnetic fields. We have the North Pole, the magnetic North Pole, that is actually over the last 50 years hugely moving. We have animations how it should move. We know that the magnetic pole changes. We know also that the magnetic pole can flip.
Yes, and we're due for a flip apparently.
But what we now see is that the pole changes much quicker than it was prognosticated. So what does it mean for global climate? And this has started I think in the 80s. It started not to match anymore the prognostications. Don't get me on the right year, I don't remember, but over the last years it is moving very, very quickly, and far too quickly for as the researchers would have suspected. So we have to sum all up, and it's not just pollution, which is horrible enough.
Yes.
Excuses for humankind of any way.
No, totally agree.
There are more things to it than just pollution, I think.
Yeah. So we're in for a very interesting couple of years with major lunistices and conjunctions of certain big players in the sky like Saturn, Neptune, and Uranus, Jupiter. But if people would like to get a reading from you, Tania, or find out more about your work, where can they go to discover?
I have my webpage. There are many articles. I haven't written actually much articles about lunation, about declination latitude. There are many Instagram posts, but as far as so long as I don't publish my book, I won't, giving the material out. So you won't find so much about that.
Yes.
More on Instagram and Facebook.
You have to buy the book. Have to buy the book.
Yes, obviously. No, because there in the book I have enough space to explain everything in detail. In the post I can just run through very small topics, and this is the main reason you have to read it in a context, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, you can pick flower, but so you can contact me on my webpage, which is taniadaniels.com, or you can search me on Facebook. This is Tania Daniels, traditional Aries astrologer, or Tania Daniels Instagram. So these are the main.
So Google Tania Daniels and you'll find her.
Yeah, you can also drop me an email. That is taniadanielsastro@gmail.com. Always happy to speak to people. So just do that.
And Tania does amazing readings, everybody. If you want Tania to check out your chart, it's very worthwhile getting a reading with Tania. She's done a few for me and they've been very life-changing. So I'm very grateful to Tania. I'm very grateful that you've taken the time to share with us today, Tania. Was there anything else that you wanted to mention or highlight regarding your work or regarding the major lunistice period that we haven't touched on yet?
I'm thinking, there are so many topics.
Yes.
What I'm now interested, I will be giving a conference on this topic, or these topics, the topic of lunistices, soon in Spanish in November. But what I'm interested is actually the megalithic sites. I just shortly mentioned that the lunistices were integral part of Stonehenge, and another place in Scotland. I don't remember right now the name. Horrible names, but there are many megalithic sites. And why is that? Because the equinoxes, the solstices give the cardinal direction, but the lunistices, the major and minor lunistices, give a distance from the north, and they give us actually, what should I say? They can track how much north position is, and this was very important to track time, because Kesenya, you will organize now a tour to Egypt, right?
Yes.
A very absolutely amazing tour, and I think people will absolutely be thrilled by this tour. But one of the things that I'm most interested in when it comes to Egypt was that the pyramids seem to be built as a mirroring certain constellations, right? For example, it is well known, as Hancock and others found out, that there is an orientation towards Orion, right?
Yes.
But what happens? You can use constellations for timing, because the constellations, yes, they change with seasons. Yeah, that's true. So some constellations you won't see besides northern and southern hemisphere, but you won't see them in certain seasons, right? Let's say you can see every year the Pleiades, for example.
Yes.
And they would indicate a certain time period. For example, in Egypt, they were associated with the Nile, with the flood coming, with the water coming, right? For sowing. But if you look at the Pleiades or any other constellation using, for example, the software Stellarium, we will see that those constellations, especially Orion, because the entire book there is about Orion, will be, yes, seen in the very same season, but higher or lower. It will move. So just imagine that there is, let's say, a window in the pyramid, And this window, when the pyramid was built, in the window in a certain month, let's say September, you would see a particular star.
Yes.
Let's say Sirius, or one, it doesn't matter, one star, right? And you would see it every year in September in that particular window, but only for a certain period of time, because declination would do its job, and the constellation would be there, but it would not be anymore in that window. The star would be seen as moving a little down or a little above. It depends, you know, it would be not any more focused. It would not be in the center of that window. And it would come a period when that window wouldn't match at all anymore with the constellation. So, and this is why we can use constellations, declinations, because we are talking here when the constellations move their position, it has to do with their declinations, because as seen from the Earth, the entire constellation moves. It has a circle. You can see this on Stellarium. There's a freeware, so you can install it.
Stellarium's magnificent, yes.
Yeah, and so you would see how these move. And this was actually done in those megalithic sites on a very minor level, or to a minor extent, also with the lunistices and the solstices, because the equivalent of the solstice is the lunistic. Solstice means the sun reaches its highest declination. The lunistic is the moon reaches her highest declination, right? Yeah, while the lunistices were also used to track eclipses, they can be used to see which time of the year was it, because the moon would be very low when in the summertime, and she would be very high in the summertime, in the wintertime. So you would have already two factors, and you would see the solstices directly aligned with the megalithic site for a certain period of time, several hundred of years, maybe even more, right? But then the sun would not be on the same place anymore. There's a wonderful precession. It's Karnak, right? In Karnak, there's a kind of corridor. And at every, I think, equinox, you would see the sun exactly in this corridor, right? Exactly on, I don't know, in the middle of this corridor. But this will work only for a certain amount of time. And then the equinox, the precession of the equinoxes will change its position, and it will not be correct anymore. So you could use those megalithic sites to track time, and this is actually be done. So this is they do it. It's not my invention, certainly. So yes, you will see a lot of this in Egypt, and I'm very thrilled for you that you're organizing this tour. And when you come to Karnak, remember.
I will remember you, but it would be lovely. Maybe we can figure out a way for you to come along. It would be lovely to have you there. Yeah, but that's fascinating. I had no idea that these structures were also aligned to or incorporated the major and minor lunistice periods of the moon. So that's what you're saying.
Not I don't know about the pyramids. I haven't studied them to that detail for the lunistice.
Those
but I know, yes, the Stonehenge, certainly they have certain holes that shine an amount of time, and then we come up with the 18.6 years period.
Isn't that amazing? Like, there's no, I mean, we've been taught that ancient cultures were more primitive, but the more we discover about the ancient cultural practices and the ancient sites, the more it's revealed how incredibly knowledgeable they were, and how they had this great understanding of time and of cycles.
Yeah, well, you see, I'm very intrigued with one particular site. It's in Baalbek, and if you look up Baalbek, it's in the Crescent, obviously, and there is a megalithic site is not the right word. There are stone blocks. One single block weighs 890 degrees. There are some which weigh more than 1,000 tons.
Oh my gosh.
Tons. Sorry. 1,000 tons. These are huge blocks. Where are they coming from? Perfectly cut. We have no idea where they are coming from. But my idea is that I don't know why, but there was a huge knowledge of many, or a long time ago, let's say, and then we lost it.
Exactly.
Because if you see certain buildings, for example, in Jericho, which is the oldest town in the world, as we know of, the town we know from archaeologists, it has more than 10,000 years, 8,000 BCE. And they found a wall in there partially intact, and who discovered it, the archaeologist, I don't remember her name right now, she said, this is nothing less, this is not less in quality than the biggest, medieval castles that we have.
Yes.
So they had a knowledge. We have no idea where it comes from.
Yes.
So,
yeah, it's
but last but not least, if we look at the sacred texts, and I'm a big fan of the books of Enoch, for example. I have read them in many translations, but there are many other similar things. And it's also in the Genesis, in the Bible. So we find that there are these watchers, and one of them, I don't remember his name, I'm horrible with names, was, he studied the sun and the course of the sun, and the other one studied planets and so on and so forth. So they were basically astronomers or astrologers or both. So there are very early indications. Just think about the Chaldeans, the people of Ur, and so on and so forth.
Now, I have to ask you, I about the Book of Enoch. This is something that always kind of intrigues or triggers me, is that they speak of astrology as being not a good science, like, something that was given to us by the Watchers, whoever the Watchers may be. It was given to women, and that they speak negatively about it, certainly in the interpretation of the Book of Enoch.
I think this depends a lot on the translation that you read. Actually, I read the translations of Enoch. I found that he has kind of journalistic style.
Excellent. Well, I want to get a copy of that,
that
translation.
I've not read anywhere. I have not read it, but maybe I'm not aware of that.
Yeah. No, but, I'm going to get the translation you've got, because I think I would prefer that one.
Yeah, but the problem with translations is, well, I have translated a lot of stuff, so I think I know something about translations. And first, we don't know about the cultures, and we have other things to see in the context of culture. Then just think about modern English. How much modern English has changed over the last 50 years. There are words now that haven't just existed not even 10 years ago. Just think about social media language, right? So how are we supposed to think that in, let's say, 500 years or 1,000 years, people would understand, let's say, what ruffle means, right? Or all these internet abbreviations like whatever, lol, whatever. We use it all the time. But no, how would an archaeologist in 1,000 years know what lol means? Maybe he would say, oh, this was an important goddess of the time, and people adored her because they mentioned her always. I don't know.
Everyone was always saying lol. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that.
OMG is another one, right? Who is that god called OMG?
WTF? Yes.
Yeah, well, think about it. Now we are laughing, but I think the concept is clear, that words can have so many meanings, and it can be a verb, it can be an adjective, it can be an abbreviation, it can be so many things. So translation is always tricky, and we have to have many texts to compare them, and many different translators with many different opinions on it. And
I agree, and especially when it comes to things like astrology, because they are so ancient, like the texts from I was going to say Nineveh, but it's Mosul, that were found, like, with tremendous amount of astrological knowledge that still has, a lot of it has to be translated. Really ancient
as
stuff.
far as we know, right, if it comes to Hellenistic astrology, which we say it's the first true astrology because it has zodiac, it uses the zodiac, it uses the houses. And before there was some other kind of astrology. Some do not even call it astrology. But let's say the concept or the body of Hellenistic astrology, as even Chris Brennan mentions in his book, seems to come out of nowhere. It is just there by 300 BCE, I think, more or less. There seems to be a body of Hellenistic astrology, and we don't know where it comes from. So this is my first interrogation. How can we judge about the history of astrology when we do not even know where it actually comes from?
Yes.
This body. So we say, no, it can't come from there or here. It can't be. It must have developed in Greece and in Egypt, because Hellenistic period was not actually in Greece. It was in Egypt, right? Don't get the names wrong. It's Hellenistic, but it is actually development in Egypt. We don't know many things. But this is, argument topic for our next discussion.
Yes, and we will have to have you back again, Tania, because there's just so much to explore, and I would love to keep talking with you. But for the sake of YouTube time, we'll wrap it up here. And once again, I'll put some links in the description below if you would like a reading with Tania, or to read more of her work and her articles and sign up for her book when her book is released. Then pop on over to her links below and get a reading. So thank you so much, Tania, for joining us here. It's always a delight to have you, and we'll be having you back to talk about all these extensive topics again in the future.
Okay, thanks again for the invitation, and okay, see you next time.
Absolute pleasure.